So we're back to talking about ethanol blending of petrol, and that's because the internet is full of angry videos that sound like this.
मोटरसाइकिल और कार वाला है, पेट्रोल गाड़ी वाला है, सब अभी रो रहा है। और ड्यू टू ओनली वन रीजन, नितिन गडकरी आप हैं। किसी के गाड़ी में चिट्टी लग जा रहा है, किसी का गाड़ी बीच में ब्रेक डाउन हो जा रहा है, किसी के गाड़ी में एथेनॉल का मात्रा ज्यादा निकल जा रहा है। कहां से हम लोग अपने बाप के यहां से इथेनॉल खरीद के लाए हैं क्या? कहां से लाए हैं हम लोग इथेनॉल? हमारा कंपनी है एथेनॉल का, हम बनाते हैं एथेनॉल। कहां से इसका टेस्ट होना चाहिए कि एथेनॉल है क्या नहीं है, किस प्रकार से आप लोग मिलवाते हैं? झूठ बोल रहे हैं आप लोग।
Now, this is just one video. This is Manish Kashyap, who's a content creator, who's basically saying that his car got damaged because of ethanol blending. But the internet is full of many angry videos. People filling the petrol in plastic bottles and saying that, okay, it doesn't actually look like 20%, it looks like a lot more than that. People saying that it's damaging their bikes, that it's damaging their cars, and asking for explanations. So we've brought this up again to answer these questions of, is it actually damaging our cars or our vehicles? Is it really an experiment that the government is conducting? What is really going on with ethanol blending in our country? So remember, like, share, subscribe, sign up for this video. And of course, sign up for our membership where we'll give you a bulletin every day that will tell you everything that's going on in the world without any of the triggering that comes with the news. Let's take a look at what's going on. So because of all of the criticism that we've seen on the internet, the Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas held a press conference where he basically addressed the challenges or the concerns that people had by saying this about mileage.
So this note, please look at it. It's not the note where we, with great responsibility, by the way, we are not just giving you the note. Secretaries also put it on our ministry's website so that it's part of the record. And to quote somebody saying that fuel mileage is going to be dropped. Arey bhai, it's now well established that when you have ethanol, they use it in racing cars also. The acceleration increases. What is that thing called? The knocking. That improves. Mileage, yes, it may drop a little. But it may drop a little. Mileage can drop a little because of various things. If you're driving from here to Gurugram, and if you follow the route I follow, then there are many points at which there are toll bridge, other things. So calculate that. So we've been very open about it. Secondly, we have reached a stage after consulting all the stakeholders. My God, SIAM, ARAI.
He also said, the minister also said that the government will not bring in higher blends of 22, 25, 27, 30% of fuel unless the testing is adequately done. These are purely regulatory paperwork that they're pushing right now. So it was kind of the minister to actually address the challenge about mileage, but he has not at all addressed the challenge about damage to cars. And if we look at the main consumer complaints that are emerging right now on X or Reddit or Facebook or the automotive forums as well on the internet, there are largely 3 or 4 things that people are complaining about. One, that the government changed the fuel without asking us and we were not informed and not given a choice. So if you roll into the fuel pump, you have to take E20. There's no E10, there's no E0. So there's no 100% fuel that you can actually opt for. Owners of older cars are feeling cheated right now because they say if they knew that this change was coming, maybe they could have delayed the purchase of their cars. There's fear of engine damage, fuel lines, rubber seals, injectors, pumps, corrosion, engine wear. People are asking, is it slowly going to destroy my whole engine? Is it going to digest my car? What is going on? Nobody told us when we bought the car. Again, dealerships didn't discuss ethanol compatibility. Apparently, sales brochures barely mentioned it. And so this is another massive criticism. Same price, less energy. This is really interesting. People are saying that why are we paying full price for petrol but getting only 80% petrol? Shouldn't there be a price cut? Two-wheeler owners are also complaining, saying they have idling, rough idling, harder cold starts, slightly reduced pickup, and there's confusion about compatibility. Effectively, people would really like some understanding on compatibility. If I bought my car before 2023, is it compatible or is it not compatible? And how do I make it compatible? And finally, of course, the real problem is, are we guinea pigs? Are we beta testers? Is this part of an experiment? And why is the government not being more forthcoming with its arguments? So let me tell you what the government's, and like I always do, I give you both sides of the story. So there's the government side and there is the consumer side. So let's look at the government side first. Right? The government has 3 or 4 main points. One, is India's dependence on crude oil that we import 88% of our crude oil, and we pay for it in dollars, and that costs us a lot of money. It puts a lot of pressure really on our economy. And so the government views it as a game changer that this is, reduces our dollar dependency. It reduces our import dependency. It's a biofuel, which means it cuts greenhouse gases and emissions. And we've achieved our target of 20% blending 5 years ahead of schedule. So the government is saying that, hey, you know what? Some 70 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions have been saved by switching to ethanol. That about $15 billion in foreign exchange has been saved since 2014 by switching to ethanol. And just to remind you, any car that was made after April 2023 is E20 compatible, that we know for sure. And in April 2023 is when E20 was introduced in select petrol pumps across the country. So the question is, what happens to cars that were manufactured before April 2023? But as an example, you'll remember during the Iran war, because of that fuel crisis that we felt, our fuel prices went up, inflation went up, government revenue got hit, OMCs actually had to bear that price. So fuel prices and dependency on global prices is one of the biggest arguments for switching to ethanol. On the flip side, and I'll give you the rebuttal to that argument, where is the price cut? So if you're saying that we're using 20% ethanol, shouldn't we be paying 20% less? Now, Hardeep Singh Puri has also in the same press conference basically said oil marketing companies incurred losses from selling petrol at price because of the global prices. And so the legitimate question of international crude prices need to stay low for a few weeks before any sort of price cut can be passed on to the Indian customer. So where is the money? Where is this 20% money that we are saving by using ethanol? Why is it not being passed on to the Indian customer? Secondly, users are confused about a recent submission that the government placed before Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court was hearing a case recently, and the government allegedly told Supreme Court that 20% ethanol blending as a program in petrol is still an ongoing experiment, and the impact of the policy will only become clear next year. Now, immediately, this caused a massive stir, saying, why are you experimenting on our assets? You should be conducting a controlled experiment. Why are you experimenting on the whole country without our permission? Now, immediately after that, the Ministry of Law and Justice rejected those reports in the submission, saying the government did not describe E20 as an experiment before the court. Any suggestion on the contrary does not reflect submissions on its behalf. Now, the court was hearing a case where BPCL was challenging the Karnataka High Court because there was a ethanol distillery that was seeking to increase its ethanol allocation, and BPCL told the court that the order will have wider implications and the government's target of achieving 20% ethanol. At that point, Attorney General, who is basically the government's lawyer, argued that this ethanol, and this is what he said, I'm quoting here, government is trying to experiment with 20% ethanol blending. We will have the results of that by next year, end quote. So he also after that clarified on India Today TV that 20% ethanol is a policy decision as not likely to change. So this is what has caused a lot of confusion from people saying, what are they doing and why aren't they communicating with us clearly? Now, again, there's a lot of criticisms. For example, there's one story that came up in the New Indian Express that quotes a mechanic saying ethanol attracts moisture. If the fuel is not properly blended or stored, it separates and settles at the bottom of the tank, and that creates trouble. Of course, another person called Vicky who imports cars who says ethanol is denser than petrol and it settles at the bottom of the fuel tank, and that causes a problem. Ravindranath, the former president of the Karnataka Petrol Dealers Association, said the biggest problem is the blending. If the centre has told Supreme Court that further experiments are required until 2027, it means the program is still being evaluated while millions of consumers are already using the fuel. Improper blending is leading to consumers mistaking ethanol separation for water contamination. So there's a huge problem right now in what is actually in the tank. But I think the bigger problem is the lack of information that the citizens are not, getting from the government. The second argument that this is good green fuel and is reducing emissions, and God knows we need to reduce emissions in our cities. The problem with this is that it's a deeply water-intensive, crop. From Niti Aayog's own roadmap, sugarcane, which is what we are using to make ethanol in India, is a water-intensive crop. To produce 100 kgs of sugar, 70 liters and 70 liters of ethanol, we require about 2,100 liters of water. And 1 liter of ethanol from sugar requires 3,000 liters of water effectively. And so critics are saying that the larger environmental footprint is actually not that great because you're not looking at the entire production process. You're only looking at the tailpipe of the car, and that's not an efficient way to actually manufacture that. There's been another criticism that has come from Bainihat, which is the most polluted city in the country, happens to be in Meghalaya. There was a recent report that said that it was the ethanol distillery that's causing the pollution, but I must point out that it's an industrial cluster and there are other industries there as well, and the Meghalaya Health Minister has not confirmed that ethanol is causing those issues. But let's look at data right now as to whether or not ethanol is actually damaging vehicles and what data we have so far. According to the Niti Aayog themselves, older vehicles may require replacement of fuel system components. And this is a roadmap of ethanol blending 2020 to 25 by Niti Aayog. And the report says, and I quote, vehicles manufactured before the introduction of E20 material compatible may require replacement of certain rubber and plastic components to make them compatible with E20 fuel. Hero MotoCorp basically says that it changed materials that it was using in its motorcycle from April 2023 to make them E20 compatible. This is part of a report that's put up on its website. TVS Motor Corp notes that E20 requires engineering changes because ethanol behaves differently from petrol. It says older engines may experience hard starting, rough idling, reduced fuel economy, and lower performance. Suzuki Motorcycle India says all current motorcycles sold in India are E20 compliant, but it cautions that older, non-compliant vehicles may experience reduced efficiency and durability concerns. Perhaps the most technical study is from the Automotive Research Association of India, where researchers have tested materials, and they said the impact of E20 on metals tested was found to be insignificant. But material selection matters. There are certain materials that performed well. There are certain materials that degraded faster. And researchers have recommended ethanol-resistant materials in vehicles. And of course, there was the Symposium of International Automotive Technology, where researchers immersed common fuel system materials in ethanol blends for 1,000 hours. In that research paper, they found that the fluorocarbons, hydrogenated nitride rubber, and fluorosilicon performed well. But conventional rubber, commonly found in older fuel systems, showed significant surface degradation after prolonged exposure. So there are a lot of questions that's available in the research that has not been answered. The government, of course, has a very clear position. It says E20 has been tested by Automotive Research Association, Indian Oil Corporation, Indian Institute of Petroleum. Over 100,000 kilometers of vehicle testing has been done. And basically, it says that E20 compatible vehicles do not experience abnormal engine damage. But what happens to those which are not compatible? So there's strong evidence, to show that E20, if the vehicle is compatible, nothing is going to happen. It's not going to get damaged. If it's certified for E20, you're fine. You don't have anything to worry about. But older vehicles not designed for E20, including, acknowledged by the Niti Aayog, will experience accelerated degradation of the fuel system, such as rubber seals, hoses, gaskets. All of these things will start to degrade. And that is a fact that everybody's currently acknowledging. So the conclusion actually winds down to simply one thing. The government has made a decision on E20 because it believes that it will help certain things. It will improve our economy. It will improve our dependency on fuel. It will improve prices. These benefits are not being passed on to the consumer right now in any way. That price cut of 20% at least needs to come in. It has not come in. The second problem is that there is no choice at the fuel station. There should be 100% petrol option at the fuel station for people who don't want to participate in this experiment, or at least E10 But to force everybody to take E20 when we know that there are many people with vehicles that were bought before 2023, it was just 2 years ago, is completely and utterly unfair. And then finally, the biggest lacuna and the biggest problem of all of this is the lack of information. The government needs to come out very clearly, share data, share information, boost confidence. At the end of the day, we could sit here and argue, and I will be the first to accept to you that a lot of the videos that you see on the internet could either be AI generated or could simply be people ranting for views. The only way to clear that up is for the government to block all of these empty spaces with clear data and to put out scientific data that sets people's minds at ease. Tell us very clearly if there is a car that is non-compatible, it's a bike that is non-compatible, and we're not talking about vintage vehicles from the 1960s, although those do need care as well. We're talking about cars or bikes that were bought 4 years ago, 5 years ago. What do we do to make these cars compatible? And if they cannot be made compatible, then give us 100% petrol option. The fact that both these choices don't exist is something that people will feel is extremely unfair. And then to add to that, none of that financial benefit is being passed on for the risk that obviously the government is not taking on, but each private individual car owner is taking on for this experiment. Please provide us with the benefits of this experiment and the risk as well. Give me a comment in the comment section to tell me if you believe that what the government is doing is the right thing, which is ushering us into an era where we depend on foreign fuel less, or are there bigger risks here that we need to be looking at?